This is Big Ideas from the ABC.
So I'm Joe Rosepars,
I'm Stephen Muller.
and we should preface this by saying that we're taking the point of personal privilege to say you are allowed to tweet during this particular presentation, despite the voice of God saying otherwise. We're from Blue State Digital, which I want to say a word about. I founded this company 9 years ago after losing a presidential election with Howard Dean. And we formed it to make sure that no campaign that we believed in as much as we did that one lost for the same reasons again. And since then, we've run 2 presidential campaigns for Barack Obama, both wins, but also 3 others in Brazil, Mexico, and France, and we've won all of those. But our mission is not as much political as it is civic. We help organizations of all kinds, advocacy groups, nonprofits, and brands build better relationships with the people that are most important to them. And we work together with them to drive big changes.
We're the only agency, I think, in the world that can count Lady Gaga's charity, the civil rights organization, the NAACP, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and America's football team, the Green Bay Packers, among our clients. The through line with each of these organizations is that they all want to invest in creating deep relationships with their consumers and with their constituents. At the heart of those relationships are stories. The story of art from around the world, the story of LGBT bullying, the story of a football team and its fans. What Blue State does is help organizations tell that story, but we do it in a way where the story becomes not just the story of an organization, but where the story of the organization and the story of the community are tightly woven together.
So you're not here, though, to hear from us specifically per se, or even about Blue State. You're here to hear about this guy. And so we want to tell you how the festival's theme of storytelling helped make and keep this guy president. But part of that is we want to tell you a little bit about our story and how we came to be telling his story.
So I showed up in 2008 with a backpack full of everything I owned in Chicago. I didn't know anyone except for the one person I was going to work for on the campaign, and I had no place to stay. But at the time, I knew it was the right place for me to be. I had gone to school for film production, and my post-film school life had made a few music videos and short films. But on the campaign, I actually started as a volunteer, and my work was calling other volunteers and creating spreadsheets. And so it wasn't until a week or 2 went past when I stumbled across the small, completely overworked but quickly growing digital team and said, you know, I can make a video or 2 if you guys need some help. And they said, you're hired. And so that was the beginning of my political storytelling career. And I was able to actually come back in 2011 and create the team of 30 folks who ultimately ended up creating a lot of the content that we'll share with you today.
For my part, it's funny that I should be speaking to you in a recital hall at the Sydney Writers Festival because I am neither a musician nor a writer. But 10 years ago, I did want to be a writer. And to this day, I'm still more starstruck by writers and journalists that I admire than I am politicians or celebrities. But 10 years ago, events in my country, especially leading up to the Iraq War and the culture of fear that really pervaded our political dialogue, turned me from a guy who had a blog and was hoping to do some freelance writing into a guy who was showing up, much like Stephen did 4 years later, to work for free for a guy named Howard Dean. We lost that campaign, as I mentioned, but even after we lost, Dean's vision of the kind of campaign of engagement and grassroots mobilization was something that we used to take over the Democratic Party in the post-election apocalyptic landscape of leadership after Kerry lost on the Democratic side. And so we took over the party, we reformed its structure and its organization, we made digital a priority at the center, but more importantly, we made grassroots organizing and putting people at the center of our story as a party. And it was that work and the historic victories of 2006 that really created this new model for the Democratic side. Because if you go back to 2004, the Republicans were singing a different tune than what we were hearing before. They really had mastered the mobilization of their supporters. And so we had a new model in 2006 that was much more open and inclusive and focused on campaigns that were funded by grassroots people chipping in a little bit at a time and taking ownership of the organization and leadership in their community. And so it was those successes and that organizational transformation at the party that led to a job interview with the freshman senator from Illinois. I wound up building a team of 100 on that first campaign to do all these things, and a team of 300 on the second campaign in 2012 to do these same things again, but bigger and better. And happily, both of those teams included Stephen. So this presentation will be much less of us talking from now on, and much more telling the story of these two campaigns, but through the prism of the actual stories and content that we created over the course of these two elections. So we'll be pausing a lot to play big, chunky clips for you, and we will be hoping that the AV gods are smiling on us as we do that. So, Stephen, what is the most important thing a candidate needs to do when starting up a campaign?
Joe, build relationships. Build relationships with voters, build relationships with supporters. Politics, like the rest of the world, is built on the economy of relationships. And just as we build relationships in other aspects of our lives, telling stories is how political campaigns build relationships. Some will be deeper than others, and relationships with undecided voters will be different than the relationships you have with supporters, but in the end, it's all about relationships.
Now, at the beginning of the campaign in 2007, Barack Obama had a lot of stuff going for him. His biography, his background, his vision for the country. But the thing that he didn't have was a lot of relationships. But somebody up there did. Hillary Clinton had a nationwide network of supporters and party stalwarts from 2 decades at the top of Democratic politics. So when we started the campaign at the beginning of 2007, it was clear that we had a strategic imperative to build our own network of relationships across the country from scratch. And digital media was the only way we could do that fast. So bringing new people into the process for a new kind of campaign organization was our only hope in the face of an incumbent essential frontrunner.
Yeah, and starting a new organization like that meant educating people about what the expectations are with how that organization would engage with its audience. So, what would that organization be? What role are people going to have with it? And talking with people and laying that foundation to say, this is how you're going to talk to this person, how you're going to work with this person who's your neighbor to talk to that person over there who may be undecided. And it's important when those relationships are first forming to have that understanding of what's expected of that person, both from an organizational standpoint, but from that individual standpoint so that they know what they're going to be asked to do.
And so for us, this meant teaching people very specifically about the notion of community organizing. And this is something that, it's a term that a lot of people hadn't ever heard before, but it's an important part of Barack Obama's background. So if you've read his first autobiography about his time on the South Side in Chicago working with people who were in economically distressed areas to transform their communities by working together, you know about this, but we were really starting from scratch, and building an organization around this notion required really starting at square one at the very beginning with clips like this one answering the question, what is community organizing?
A lot of people don't know what a community organizer is, and in fact I didn't know what a community organizer was entirely when I became one. I had been inspired by the civil rights movement and the idea of people working at a grassroots level to bring about change, to get people involved in shaping their own destiny. It's something that I carry with me when I think about politics today, obviously at a different level and in a different place, but the same principles still apply. If you've got a lot of people organized to vote, if you've got people who are raising money in small increments, $25, $50, you can actually match the power of corporations and lobbies to actually influence what's going on in a place like Washington.
And so you can't just talk about something. an explanation like the president gave just there isn't as strong as showing what that actually means. And part of defining an organization is reflecting the community back to itself, showing people what other folks are doing. And so we spend a huge amount of time and energy telling those individual stories. You'll see in our YouTube channel from 2007 and 2008, it's filled with short stories of people about why they got involved. And this upcoming one is my favorite story from a man named Charles, whose reason had nothing to do with himself.
I was born in 22. I lived through the Great Depression years. That's the reason I've been a Democrat all my life, because I saw what Roosevelt did when he first came in office. My mother would have lost her farm, we'd have lost everything we had if it hadn't been for President Roosevelt being elected to office.
Charles started volunteering with us here about 4 weeks ago now. It was right after his wife passed away. He'd been married to her for 69 years, and he has been helping us with the front desk, greeting folks, signing them in, making sure they feel welcome here. He's one of the most amazing people I've met on the campaign. He saw our raffle box that we had set up for every volunteer who came in to help us was able to submit a raffle ticket to be pulled at random, and the next day was the day that we pulled the winner, and I stuck my hand in the big box and swirled it around at random and pulled out Charles Alexander's ticket, and everyone was just in shock. Everyone in the office said if one person out of Boulder County, out of Colorado could meet Barack, this was the guy that absolutely deserved it. And we told him the next day, and he looked at us and he said, "Are you pulling my leg? Are you kidding me? I've never won anything in my life."
Oh, that's the greatest thing in my life. I tell you, I never did think I would meet someone going to be the president of the United States in my lifetime. And he is such a lovely person. He's the same in person he is on TV. And if he get to be elected president, it'll be one of the greatest jobs this country people ever done for this country. To elect him for president, now somebody can unite the country back together. Because divided, we will never go no place when we are divided.
And he's the type of person that gets me up out of bed every morning and keeps me going.
My God, all these young people here, they are our tomorrow's future. I'm dying off. Everybody my age is dying off. Everybody. The next 4 or 5 years, I probably won't be around. These young people gonna take the lead. This is what I love about seeing all these people in here volunteer, because they are our tomorrow's future. They are my grandkids' future, their great-great-grandkids, the young people that you see here today. God knows, and I've seen a bunch of them. They are really wonderful people. They're just as friendly as they can be. They are real united people. And that's what this country really be now, 100% united. And I just think that Barack Obama is a person that can do it.
Showing one person's involvement, though, isn't sufficient. You have to talk to people about the model that they're plugging into and the system and what was going on in that office and what kinds of activities were coming out of it. And so for us, that meant educating people not just about our notion of organizing and this community organizing spirit, but very specifically our model for how we were structuring the campaign. And for us, the basic component was house meetings. These house meetings themselves were grounded in the notion of storytelling. People would invite their friends and neighbors into their home, not to talk about the candidate or the campaign or even the election per se, but to have a conversation about their own personal story and what kind of country they wanted to live in and where they wanted things to go. They'd ask others to share, and they'd go through and go around the room, and they'd talk about what they could do together to help pursue some of the common challenges they identified. And at the end of the meeting, the goal was to get a few other of the attendees to host their own and invite new people into the process, and so thereby spread the word. We documented this process a lot. And talked about it not just in individual videos, but in whole DVDs about this model and this process. And this was a main tool for our organizers across the country. This was the essence of our ground organization that we built up over time in the primary. So here's another clip. It's a bit about one woman who hosted her own house meeting in South Carolina after attending one that her friend had invited her to.
My name is Grace B. Cusack. I live here on Sanborn Street. Our neighborhood is called West Florence, the west side. This is called the house party for Obama. I attended one, and then I agreed 2 weeks ago, and then I agreed to do one here. And I called out all my well wishers and friends and sisters.
Yes, it was interesting.
Yes,
My very first
nice.
one.
This is your first one?
Yes.
Have you guys ever been involved in politics on this kind of level before, or is this?
No, this is
First
the first
time.
Well, never been rich. I've been I live about a little bit above the poverty level. I've never had a lot of money, but I'm a trendsetter. I've always been a trendsetter. Honey, if Grace do it, everybody want to do it. So I know it's going to be big. Just because I had this house party here today, they're going to want to have one because Grace Cusack can do it. I can do it too.
And of course, just as important as these individual stories are themselves, the connections between these stories were equally as important. And so the work that was happening in Ohio, the work that was happening in Florida, the door knocking that was happening in Virginia, all of these things were connected. And near the end of the campaign, we had a huge library of stories and footage from all over the country. And we wanted to create a piece that connected all of these people and places. We also faced the challenge of uniting the party around a common theme after a divisive primary, and so we tried to weave the story of our campaign into the wider story of a moment in time, a moment in history. We did this video, which is one of my absolute favorites from 2008 campaign. Each little bit you see in this is part of a larger video that we also created over the course of 2007 and 2008. And so if you had been following closely along and watching all of our videos, each one of these moments probably had a little bit of an extra special feeling for you. So here are their words.
This election isn't going to be about changing parties. It's going to be about living for every other American. That's what gives me hope.
I don't want a nation just for me. I want a nation for everybody.
You can't walk away and not feel hope and not feel that glimmer of light again.
I don't think I was ever this interested in the voting process.
It's the first time I've ever felt compelled to be part of a movement such as this.
I'm gonna get them back involved in this process. The grassroots level first, and then let it go. That's gonna make me happy.
Organizing ourselves. The campaign helps us. They're there to help us, but we're organizing ourselves.
It is the relationships that we have with one another that is our strength.
I think for a long time I had given up that we could work together to make change in this country.
So I've been involved in politics, I've seen politicians, but this is different.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is no ordinary time. This is no ordinary election. And this may be our last chance to reclaim the America we love.
We are one people. We are one nation. And together, we will begin the next great chapter in the American story with words that will ring from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea. Yes, we can.
Two things about that video. One is that we made that for the convention in 2008 in Denver, and so it was on the Jumbotron up there. And it played at every rally and event that we had from then through Election Day, including on election night in Grant Park. It was our sort of marquee story of the campaign for 2008. And I think the thing that's notable about it is that the candidate isn't in it. That's a story of our campaign that you hear a little bit from him in the end, but really reflects the fact that ordinary people built it. During the making of that video, and we had to go around the country and shoot those bits that were in motion, and we asked our supporters to send in themselves holding the different signs, and so those were actual people from all around the country who emailed and uploaded their stuff. But at the very beginning, there was a meeting that the video team was having at headquarters at the beginning of the process, and there was a very heated argument actually about whether the signs should say hope or change. And I was brought in to settle this argument. And I'm proud to report that I was the decisive leader who said both. It actually felt more honest and a little less political to have a couple of different words in there, and sometimes I wish we had a couple of more. This next video is one that's from the very end of the campaign. As you know, we were in pretty good shape down the home stretch in the general election. What with John McCain forgetting how many houses he lived in, and Sarah Palin being Sarah Palin. But the reality is that there can be too much of a good thing. Our projections had us ahead, but we saw that our volunteers started to not show up for their shifts, to go knock on doors and pull people out for early voting. And we saw that if people took things for granted, we wouldn't get the work done to ensure that those polls held up on election day, because it's all part of a plan. And so we tested several different approaches to this problem, and it required some nuance, right? Yes, we're winning, and don't worry, but make sure you actually go and do the work to get it done. We couldn't appear falsely panicked, but we also couldn't appear falsely confident. And so during this process of trying to figure out how to craft this message to our supporters and volunteers especially, we stumbled upon a viral video from the website failblog.org. Check it out. And we put our own animation and message to it and put it out there to test. And it was by far the most persuasive at getting folks to actually sign up and RSVP for their final Get Out the Vote weekend volunteer shifts. And so this video was actually, it will be hard to believe after you watch it, this video was the closing message to all of our volunteers on the final weekend before the election in 2008. I love that one. So anyway, we won. It was a great moment. So that's one photo from election night. This is another. That's my mom, and you can't see in the photo, but she's got him in sort of a death grip on his elbow. And this is right backstage after the speech, and she had somehow gotten herself behind the Secret Service cordon rope, and I was very concerned. That looks like happiness, but it's also panic, and I'm trying to get through the crowd to help her. So, but fast forward, and we found ourselves on a cold, wintry day in Washington, D.C. in January.
So, end of 2008, a lot of people thought, hey, I've done my job. The guy is president. He should be able to go make everything happen that we hoped he'd make happen. I spent 2 years of my life volunteering, or I've donated, I've made hundreds of phone calls. I did my job. Now it's time for him to do his. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. And coming out of 2008, we did a poor job of communicating that to folks. we didn't win the campaign because a couple of smart folks in DC, and we certainly weren't going to get the business done we wanted to get done relying on those same folks in Washington. What we really needed was for people to continue to stay involved with the campaign. That was our entire ethos through the campaign, and it was a mistake that we didn't communicate that more clearly and thoroughly to folks coming out of the election victory.
There's another aspect to the post-election reality that's important to note, and you can see this quote. Many of our supporters and even some of the people who worked in the administration, I think, underestimated our opponents' determination to stop Barack Obama at every cost. We got a bunch of things done: the Recovery Act, student loan reform, and of course Obamacare. But another storyline took hold during this period when we were absent a campaign organization keeping our people mobilized. And so we saw the power of paranoia about government to create its own storyline and the rise of the Tea Party. And so they ran away with it in our election in 2010 in the midterms. There's another dynamic to flag, and the president talked about this in his post-election press conference the day after, that the administration had pursued many of its goals and gotten some things done through traditional inside Washington channels during those first 2 years. They negotiated, they cajoled, they horse traded, they played the same old games with the opposition and with the media, and sometimes won. But the fact that, besides the results of what did or didn't happen policy-wise, this seeming return to business as usual was a real hurdle for a lot of our supporters who had expected something more. And so this was, in November 2010, something that the president flagged and was something that we kept in mind and was very much front of mind as we began to set up the re-election campaign in the beginning of 2011.
So that was the environment that we faced going into the early part of 2011. But we had an opportunity. This is campaign headquarters in 2000, I think, winter of 2011.
The carpet was a different color by the time we were done.
Yeah, some stains. And so, what was a challenge in rebuilding this organization was also an opportunity, and we had to show that the last 4 years were connected. What we had started in 2007 and 2008 was connected to what the president was working on as president, and was also connected to what the campaign in 2011 and 2012 would be fighting for. Those weren't three distinct products, and they were all one journey that we needed to show people that we are going to take them on. And this wasn't easy, and it wasn't the storyline that many folks had in mind. And in the beginning parts of 2011, articles like this were written, and we had a hard time bringing small donors and supporters back into the fold with us. We also had articles like this written by Nate Silver. And so if you, I assume most people know Nate Silver. He was the numbers genius in 2008 who ran his own blog called 538. And he predicted the last election within a half a percentage point. And so, I'd say that his blog was probably bookmarked by 95% of all Obama staffers. And so when he wrote the above, with Perry having slumped in the polls, however, and Romney the more likely nominee, the odds tilt slightly toward Obama joining the list of one-termers. Obama's position is tenuous enough that it might not be a winnable one for him. And I think when that article was written, you could hear the communal groan in the office. But we had an opportunity here, again, to shape this going into 2012.
So in the beginning of 2012, that was still almost a year into having sort of been building the re-election campaign. But it was still before many people tuned in to the election, or especially on our side, because we didn't have a primary. But in February 2012, we came upon the 5th anniversary of the day all of this movement began. It's the 5-year anniversary of when Barack Obama announced his candidacy in February of 2007. And so at a moment when things were puttering a bit, and we needed to seriously start getting people involved, like in a real way, building for the election. And as Romney was poised to get the nomination, it presented an opportunity to tie together everything that had happened up until that point in time, all 5 of those years of the first campaign and the administration and the second campaign up to that point. And not just to tell that story as one, but to tell that story through the medium in which many people had experienced it, which was through our digital program. So this is that video that we created for the 5-year anniversary. It's called The Story of Us.
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America. And standing up with courage, they somehow managed to change the world. Yes, we can.
Barack Obama has won the Iowa caucuses.
You have done what the cynics said we couldn't do.
He's the first candidate we've ever seen who had an organization that brought together the internet and community organizing.
He makes me care, and he makes me want to get up and go and do something with my life.
The next Vice President, Joe Biden.
I move Senator Barack Obama be selected by this convention as the nominee of the Democratic Party for President of the United States.
I accept your nomination for presidency of the United States.
A small-town mayor is sort of like a community organizer, except that you have actual responsibilities.
A fist bump, a pound, a terrorist fist jab?
Fist bump, please.
Oh, yeah. All right.
First shot, straight through. That's how you perform under pressure.
After a hard-fought battle, it all boils down to today.
11 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have news. There will be young children in the White House for the first time since the Kennedy generation.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
And so it began. He faces a severe economic crisis at home and an increasingly dangerous world abroad.
I don't know how passing health care will play politically, but I know it's right. We are going to get this done. We are going to make history.
The most persistent fly I've ever seen.
Nice.
Now, where were we? I signed this bill for my daughters and all those who will come after us. So in love. We are not a nation that says, don't ask, don't tell. We are a nation that says, out of many, we are one. This is done. The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda. One of the first decisions that I made as president was to save the U.S. auto industry from collapse. I am sending this Congress a plan called the American Jobs Act. You should pass this jobs plan right away. This is a make or break moment for the middle class and for all those who are fighting to get into the middle class. Welcome home. Welcome home. If you stick with me, we're going to finish what we started in 2008 America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do.
You guys had the character from Central Casting, though. I mean,
I should have mentioned that was the only singing that we'll promise. You'll notice in that video something new that didn't happen in any of the previous ones, which is the notion of accomplishments, which was a new challenge for us in the 2012 campaign. Ending the war in Iraq, comprehensive health reform, these weren't just accomplishments and boxes checked, they were promises kept that had real impact on people's lives. And so figuring out how to tackle this was one of the main challenges of the re-election campaign. It couldn't just be about what we'd done, it had to be about where we were going and how to link those things. But reflecting back to what this organization had accomplished in those 2 years was a really important part of making the community understand their own value and their role in it. Saying this is what we've done already, if that's presented well and presented time and again, and letting people know things that maybe they have forgotten about or didn't hear about in the first place, is a pretty compelling argument in itself for saying, let's keep going.
And so we knew how important stories were and the stories of impact were going to be to this campaign, and we had a huge infrastructure that we put in place to find those stories. And we had, at least my 30-person team whose sole focus was telling those stories in video. We had a huge team who was dedicated to telling those stories on the blog and over social media. We had a inbound team that was receiving letters and responding to those. And so we had dozens and dozens of people who were working on and looking for those stories, even going back to 2009 and 2010 in our database of stories that people who had submitted online. There was one spreadsheet from Healthcare Stories that was over 500,000 lines long, each with a different story that had been submitted. And there were just tons of people coming through those, picking out ones that we thought would be interesting, and calling those people and trying to see where their story was today, and if that was a story they'd be willing to share with us. And so, whenever a major issue came up, we would put a post out in social media to share your story. We'd send an email out to a given list, and we'd be collecting these stories constantly. And so this one, the story of Ian, actually came to us old school. And he wrote a letter to the president, and his letter.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Ian. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am 10 years old. I really hope that I can meet you someday because I would like to shake your hand and thank you for bringing my dad home from Iraq.
4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq, and we did. I said we'd wind down the war in Afghanistan, and we are.
My dad served 2 tours in Iraq. His time away was really hard for me. This is a note that my dad sent me. My dearest Ian, son, I miss you so much. I had trouble sleeping sometimes because I was so worried about him. He gave me his dog tags before he left, and I kept them with me all the time so that I can feel close to him.
Every time I meet a spouse who says, you know what, you promised to bring my husband or my wife back from Iraq, and they're back now. Every time I see that happen, I'm reminded of the progress that we've made.
Because you ended the Iraq war, I have my dad back safe.
Say hi, Daddy.
Now I get to spend birthdays and holidays with my dad, and we can do all the things I have missed out on while he was away. Roger.
You're the reason why those who fought so bravely for us can come back and hear those 2 amazing words, welcome home. You are the reason that happened.
is my hero, and so are you. Thank you for getting my dad out of my
Here, it's good to meet you. So I was hearing about all this. I want you to give something to your dad, okay?
Okay.
It's pretty important. There's a coin. Tell him that's because we're proud of him. We appreciate his service.
Okay.
All right, you think you can do that for me? All right. I'm very proud of you. You look after your mom, though.
I look up to you both, and I want to be just like you. Thank you, Ian.
I lost the bet of who would have to be the first one to talk after that. We went through, there were a bunch of revisions to that one over time when we were making it. I think there was something like 20, and I cried every single time I was reviewing it for approval to give feedback. And then cried again when we cut 15 and 30-second versions of it. You know, we had another new challenge in 2012 that we didn't have in 2008, and that was the challenge of defining our opponent. You know, and I think a lot of the appeal of Romney to Republicans was that this picture notwithstanding, that he was sort of from central casting, right? I mean, that was the case for Romney, and I think it's wonderful that we've gotten to a place where someone's saying, as if it's an obvious fact, that the black guy named Barack Hussein Obama is from central casting, because that makes me feel like we've done our job. But Romney was a new guy on the scene. You know, back in 2008, Hillary Clinton and then John McCain they were known entities. They were genuine, like, media celebrities, and had been for years, who people had pretty much set opinions about. Romney was more new to the national stage. He was somebody who got lost in the shuffle when he ran in the Republican primary in 2008. And so this 2012 opportunity was an opportunity to define him, and that's something that we started on well before he became the nominee. That was a lot of what we were doing in 2011 and the beginning of 2012. Now, you probably saw that Romney did us a lot of favors in this regard. Just by being himself, you know, letting everybody know that corporations are people, man, and calling 47% of Americans lazy halfwits. But for our part, we had to make sure that people knew that this guy wasn't a joke, that he had a genuine record in business and as governor that was bad and portended bad things for the country. And so we had to fill in that picture of him. We did so by producing a ton of in-depth original reporting about his venture capital work and the kinds of effect that he had in communities where he cost jobs, ruined families, and even whole towns with decisions that he made to enrich himself and his partners. Those stories are gut-wrenching, and there are a lot of them, and we produced a ton of them during the campaign. But I can't show more gut-wrenching stuff after the video of Ian. So that's a little too much. So here's a different video that we made about Romney's record as governor, where he raised taxes and fees on people in Massachusetts, despite his story and claims to the contrary.
As governor, I cut taxes 19 times and didn't raise taxes.
He called them fees. I'm sure the people that had to pay it, whether they called them bananas, so he still had to pay extra.
Actually, interestingly enough, you know, some of the most damaging stuff, video against Romney was that stuff that was done by the Republicans themselves in the primaries about his whole experience as a corporate raider and all of that. That was, I mean, they did your work for you, really, didn't they?
Made much use of it, and they sure lived on.
So we had another new challenge in 2012 that we really didn't face in 2008, and that was the ever-shortening news cycle. I think we were all familiar with the 24-hour news cycle, and any professional presidential campaign is adept at plugging into that and creating content for morning shows, for afternoon producers, and for nighttime shows. But in 2012, we had the social media news cycle, which was a new beast, often creating and consuming content in just a matter of hours or less. And so while in 2008 we certainly had Facebook and were on Twitter, I think the number of Twitter followers we had in 2008 were like 100, 200,000, which was drastically different than our numbers in 2012. And so it presented a real challenge for us, especially on the video side, because video is so time-consuming to create. And this really came to a head for us after the final presidential debate, where the president had a good final debate, and we wanted to take that momentum into the final weeks of the campaign. And so we devised an 8-state, 48-hour presidential trip around the country, and we reported on it in a marathon real time. And so this is the trip that he took. Starting in Washington, D.C., heading to Iowa, across the country to the West Coast, back to Florida, up to Virginia again, over to Illinois, to Ohio, and then back home, and all in 40 hours. And we wanted to take, the key thing for us, though, was we wanted to take people on that trip with the president. We wanted the more off-the-record and genuine moments, the stuff between landing on the tarmac and getting up on the stage that doesn't get reported on necessarily by CNN and other news networks. And even more importantly, we wanted the president to be the guide, taking people on the trip with him. So here he is at his first stop.
Hey everybody, we are kicking off our 48-hour campaign marathon right here in Iowa, where it all started back in 2007, 2008. You can hear crowds are excited. Everybody recognizes it's time for us to really pull out all the stops. We've got early vote here in Iowa, so a lot of folks are already starting to vote, but we need every single one of you to be just geared up on these last 13 days. I can't wait. I'm hoping I get a chance to see you in your home cities. Let's keep it going. All right? Talk to you soon.
And again, so that was posted, that was recorded, posted, and tweeted within 10 minutes. And before he even stepped off the stage after the speech that he went and gave, that was everywhere. But we didn't just want to capture those specific moments where we had an opportunity to just place the president and film him. We also wanted to catch the more genuine moments when he would travel around and go to restaurants and meet with people. And so we had moments like this as well that we wanted to post to give people a sense of that journey and the things that were happening along the way.
Okay, everybody say cheese. Cheese! There you go.
Mama. Good job. You can do it.
Happy birthday, man.
And so if you're following along with this, at every stop, almost a couple videos a day, you'd get a sense of what this journey was unfolding. And we're the first campaign and remain the only campaign to have done anything like this. And we were able to do it by using a few new technologies. One that allowed our cameraman to strap a backpack to his back, connect it to his camera, and stream a live feed over wireless networks all the way back to Chicago. And in Chicago, we had what was essentially a closed-circuit TV of everything that he was filming. So the entire thing was being watched live by campaign staffers back in Chicago. And when any moment happened that we felt was interesting or would play into what people were talking about on social media, we were able to instantly clip it and post it and get it out and disseminate it on Twitter, Facebook, or our YouTube channel. And it's probably the closest any campaign has ever come to being its own live news network.
And so this content, though, wasn't just about the novelty of doing it or even the personal connection to the president that people would get through it. We actually had important messages that we wanted to get out to people through this content, not just about the issues, but about the voting process itself. And it's important to note, here, one of the keys to both Obama victories was early voting. And that's the process, which is, I understand, quite normal here in Australia, whereby some, in the US, only some of the states allow people to vote over a lengthy period of time before the actual election day. Obviously, this means a lot of working people who can be, in our case, busy on a Tuesday that isn't even a holiday. They can be too busy to get to the polls. And so we, as small d Democrats, support early voting because it gets more people into the process, and we want more people voting regardless of who they're voting for. But our organization also preferred to have people early vote because for our volunteers, it freed them up on election day to be able to help other people get to the polls. And for our folks who we were worried about might not vote, we wanted to get them to vote early because we had more chances to get to them and to try to not leave anything to chance on election day. So we were constantly educating people and promoting this, even when the press wasn't that interested or didn't think it was anything more than boring process stuff. So on this trip, we stopped with the president at home in Illinois and built that in specifically around this message so that he could cast his early vote, which he was the first sitting president to go do in person.
Hey guys, we are in the Chicago field office here with these outstanding volunteers. They're making calls all across the country to some of the battleground states, calling our voters, making sure that they're getting out to vote. You will be happy to know that as part of our 48-hour campaign extravaganza, fly around, no sleep adventure, I just voted. And I'm honored to be the first sitting president who's ever early voted. Here in Illinois, we've got early vote. And in a lot of the states, in Ohio, in Florida, in Nevada, in Colorado, all across the country, you have the opportunity to early vote too. And it's really convenient. There are no lines. You do it on your own time. People are really helpful. And I now have proof that I voted. I can't tell you, because it's a secret ballot, who I voted for. But it gives me a lot of satisfaction to be able to exercise my franchise. So I hope that everybody is taking the opportunity of early vote. We want to get as many of our votes as possible in as early as possible so that we can then focus on the folks who might not have voted yet. And we can concentrate our calls. We don't have to badger you with a phone call if you've already voted. We can go call somebody else, all right? So I appreciate you guys. I am now off to Cleveland. That's going to be our last stop, and I could not have had a better couple of days because I'm getting a chance to meet all of you, all right? Take care.
You can kind of tell he wasn't kidding about the no sleep stuff.
At that point, yeah.
So in those 48 hours of the trip, we were able to post more than 30 different videos, and that was 3 of them. And this wasn't for naught, and these things didn't sort of expire. Those 30 videos got more than 1 million views just over the 3 days of that trip alone.
And we decided to take it one step further. And so around the Democratic National Convention, we actually produced an hour-long live show. And that's where, at the convention, for those that don't know, that's where the president would get officially renominated, and it's historically the biggest moment of the campaign. And we knew that the sheer volume of reporting and coverage from media outlets would be staggering, and so there'd be a lot of noise for folks. And so to combat that and cut through that, we wanted to create a destination for supporters where they'd have a convention experience tailored just for them. Something that would be fun, geared towards a slightly younger audience, but also tie back to the shared journey of the organization. Now, to promote this show, we wanted to have a little bit of fun. Remember, we're going and competing against every single major cable network in the US, so we came up with something a little bit different here.
Hey, this is Barack. Listen, I need to know if you're on board. Okay, good. Because I'm counting on you. Everybody is. We have to get this right. So there's a lot at stake here. Just remember that I'm trusting you on this, and I'll see you there.
Dude, who was that? Sounded intense. The president.
Sweet.
Kal Penn hosts the 2012 Democratic National Convention coverage, live from Charlotte, Thursday, September 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tune in at BarackObama.com. Be there.
So this was a full hour show that we had leading up to the president's speech the last night of the convention. We had celebrities come on. We had up-and-coming Democratic leaders who were either just about to go on stage at the convention or had just come off. My personal favorite was that we had a segment with the campaign staffers who were senders on our fundraising emails. And so our supporters who were watching got to see the people, and they could put faces to names for what they were getting in their inboxes every week and sometimes multiple times a day. That night, over 1 million people tuned in to watch our live stream, which is obviously a larger audience than most American cable networks have on any given weeknight.
So this is the last story we're going to tell, and I think it's fitting because the story of Stacy Lynn, I think, best embodies the full journey of what we've talked about tonight. So Stacy Lynn was a very early supporter of the president. She started supporting him the day after he announced he was running in 2007, and she stuck with us. She organized and attended House meetings. She donated several times to the campaign. And on November 4th, 2008, she was one of several million people who could honestly say that they had made a difference in the election. But where it gets interesting is the spring of 2010. Just a few months after the passage of the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, Stacy Lynn gave birth to a daughter, Zoe. But Zoe was born with a congenital heart defect. In other words, she only had half a heart. Through many surgeries, doctors were able to stabilize Zoe, and today, in many ways, she's just a normal kid.
And this is an important point to note because in America, getting sick isn't just a physical trauma. It can bring serious financial challenges that families didn't expect. In Zoe's case, she ran into one of the most egregious rules that American health insurance companies used to have. They put lifetime caps on the amount of money that they'll pay for any given beneficiary's problems over the course of their life. So Zoe, in her case, because she had to have these surgeries straight away after being born, had gotten to half of her health insurance policy's lifetime limit barely a year into her life. And she's going to need care for the rest of her life, too, to keep her healthy. So the Lynns, like thousands of American parents, weren't sure what to do. This all happened as the debate over Obamacare was happening in the Congress. And the passage and signing of that changed that. It banned insurance companies from imposing lifetime caps on people. And because Mitt Romney and the Republican Party promised to repeal Obamacare on day one in full, they would be leaving kids like Zoe vulnerable and pulling back that policy for the insurance companies. And so her mom, Stacy, and her community heard those Republicans loud and clear and had something to say about it.
And so the story clearly articulated the choice in the election and the real-life consequences of that choice. So we sent a team down to put a face to one of these families, to the Lynn family, that would be affected by this.
Give him a kiss. Give him a big kiss.
My name is Stacy Lynn. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and the Affordable Care Act is saving my daughter's life. I was still pregnant with Zoe when she was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect, and I was just in shock. I mean, we were sitting in that room thinking, can you survive with a heart defect? The doctor proceeded to tell us there's actually a set of 3 open heart surgeries required for her to survive. So her first surgery took place at 15 hours old. Her second surgery took place at 4 months old. And she's awaiting her third and final surgery so that her half a heart works for her entire body. After that third surgery, you can kind of relax and start living a more normal life.
Come on, Zoe.
Before the Affordable Care Act, health insurance companies were allowed to set lifetime caps on how much coverage each individual was provided. By 6 months of age, Zoe was halfway to her lifetime cap.
That's an orange.
The thought of her hitting that cap and not having the opportunity to continue on health insurance is frightening because we can't pay those medical bills. I mean, that's why we pay premiums.
Said the mother sheep to her child. You know, here's insurance that you've been paying for the past 20 years, but oh, don't get sick. Don't have a child that was born with a heart defect, because once you reach a certain limit, you know, we're not going to insure them anymore.
The thought of the Affordable Care Act being repealed is something that actually gives me anxiety, and I probably consciously think about it once a week.
I can't even fathom what's going through the minds of people who want to repeal the Health Care Act. They're choosing life or death for many, many Americans.
It's just so scary because the Affordable Care Act benefits not only our family, but every family who's affected by some pre-existing condition or a condition that may require a lifetime of medical care.
Say bye.
Bye, girls.
It's sort of a state of denial, like, well, that couldn't happen. Why would that happen? Why would they take that away from us?
Slide, yes. You want to try to swing? Swing.
Zoe's made us live a little bigger and a little brighter every day, so we don't take anything for granted. To give my daughter the best chance at life, my family needs the Affordable Care Act to stay intact.
So the Lynn story became a cornerstone of our campaign, and we actually flew them out to North Carolina to speak at the Democratic National Convention in August. And Stacey actually got to sit with the First Lady the night after her speech.
And I want to note especially that the producer and the cinematographer who went out to the Lynn family house, you can see them here, became incredibly close with the family during the process, and they even had a reunion at the convention because they were all there. These guys were producing our live show, and Stacey was there to speak. And Stacey wrote this on her blog a few days after the convention about her experience. Even though they were only at our house for a few days, when they left, they felt like family was leaving. We kept in touch with them since then, but we were very excited to see them in person again. The girls were excited too. We love you, Sierra and Andy. Those are our staff. And so I want to take that as a way to pivot towards the end here. You know, we started this presentation to you talking about relationships and how important they were to our campaign. The relationships between our campaign and the individual, yes, but also between individuals in the context of the campaign. And so we want to leave you with the final thought about these relationships and the importance of it, because if you build them the right way and treat them with care, they have incredible power. The stories of these people and of our movement didn't just help us win. They helped us leave the political process better off than how we found it. And that's by stitching together more closely the ties that bind us together as a community. And importantly, these relationships like this one between Stacey and Sierra and Andy, these relationships last. And like in the rest of life, not all of them last. And they don't stay the same forever. But these relationships and what people experience together and how they grow individually, how they challenge themselves, how they learn to speak out in a different way for the things that they care about, and even become leaders along the way, are the building blocks of the unwritten story of our common future together. So in our last video tonight, we want to show you President Obama, putting this in his own words, the day after the 2012 election, when he had anywhere and everywhere else to be in the world now that the campaign was over, he decided to spend a few hours at our Chicago headquarters speaking with volunteers and staff and going around and hugging and talking to every single one of them about what the campaign meant to him. So this is the president in his own words.
I came to Chicago knowing that somehow I wanted to make sure that my life attached itself to helping kids get a great education or helping people living in poverty to get decent jobs and be able to work and have dignity. To make sure that the people didn't have to go to the emergency room to get health care. And I ended up being a community organizer out in the south side of Chicago. A group of churches were willing to hire me. And I didn't know at all what I was doing. And the work that I did in those communities changed me much more than I changed the communities, because it taught me the hopes and aspirations and the grit and the resilience of ordinary people. And it taught me the fact that under the surface differences, we all have common hopes and we all have common dreams. And it taught me something about how I handled disappointment and what it meant to work hard on a common endeavor. And I grew up. I became a man during that process. And so when I come here and I look at all of you, what comes to mind is it's not that you guys actually remind me of myself. It's the fact that you are so much better than I was. In so many ways. You're smarter and you're better organized, and you're more effective. And so I'm absolutely confident that all of you are going to do just amazing things in your lives. And what Bobby Kennedy called the ripples of hope that come out when you throw a stone in a lake, that's going to be you. I'm just looking around the room and I'm thinking, wherever you guys end up, in whatever states, in whatever capacities, whether you're in the private sector, or the non-for-profit, or some of you decide to go into public service, you're just going to do great things. And that's why, even before last night's results, I felt that the work that I had done in running for office had come full circle. Because what you guys have done means that the work that I'm doing is important. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of all of you. And what you described. What you guys accomplished, it will go on in the annals of history, and people will read about it and they'll marvel about it. But the most important thing you need to know is that your journey is just beginning. You're just starting. And whatever good we do over the next 4 years will pale in comparison to what you guys end up accomplishing for years and years to come. And that's been my source of hope. That's why during the last 4 years, when people ask me about, how do you put up with this or that and the frustrations of Washington, I just think about you. I think about what you guys are going to do. And that's the source of my hope. That's the source of my strength and my inspiration. And I know that you guys won't disappoint me, because I've already seen who you guys are, and you all are just remarkable people, and you've lifted me up each and every step of the way. All right? Thank you, guys.
We are going to have just a few minutes for a few short questions. Just a quick comment, though. As a television reporter, the fact that BarackObama.com had 1 million viewers is a little bit disturbing, but and more than the cable networks. I think it's an indication of how significant this change is and the sorts of things that are happening out there in the media environment. One quick question I have as well: a lot of what you do is is motivating people to get out to vote. I mean, we don't have to do that in countries like Australia. You also have, a candidate with a backstory that is, rich with potential. You said that you did all of this, you did the same things in other countries. I'm just wondering how, what the comparisons were. Did you use the same model? Did you, is it?
Well, it's different in different countries as the electoral systems are different. I think in places like Brazil and France where we worked, it's similar to ours, where it's the campaign is a big startup that is a whole bunch of new people, and they go, and it's a big different budget, and you can do different things. Whereas in the parliamentary systems like here and in the UK, it's a bit more of the party goes in, and there's an increase in activity, but it's not the same. It's not the same scale of change that happens, but when the election time comes, and of course our elections are a lot longer, and we have a lot more time to do that. But those are these things are principles in this approach. Is not just about motivating people to vote. It's about building the deeper relationships with the people who are going to go out and persuade people, not just to go vote, but to have more meaningful interactions with an undecided voter about the issues that they care about. In a real human way that's much more effective than a TV ad that they're sick of seeing.
And that's a commonality of all politics.
Yeah.
Okay. We have some questions. If you'll have to stand up and move to one of the microphones, so perhaps this lady down here can move to microphone 1.
Hi there. In Australia, apathy
yeah.
is sort of at an all-time high in politics, possibly. How did you deal with, besides sentimentality, how did you deal with apathy? A lot of your campaign process seems to be focused on preaching to the converted, so to speak. So how did you deal with apathy? How did you deal with cynicism? And how did you convert?
Yeah, I think the issue with apathy and cynicism is that when the messengers who are creating the content and putting it out into the world are also apathetic and cynical, it's very, very difficult to divorce that from the content. And so, we try to approach things earnestly and in good faith, and that was at times sentimental, at times funny, at times very factual and informative, but it was all about trying to arm our supporters with the materials that they could have, whether it's education in their own mind or sometimes physical design materials, to have quality interactions and conversations, fact-based conversations with the people around them who they could influence. And so, we tried to have a higher standard and a more effective buying strategy for our paid media and things that we were delivering specifically to undecided voters. But running through it all is a commitment to honesty and a belief that, it's, in some cases, as you see in Stacey Lynn's daughter's situation, deadly important that people actually take their responsibility to vote and make a smart decision seriously.
The microphone 2 there.
As I'm sure everyone's aware, the using social media is not just the province of the political campaigns, but is used also by people who we might refer to as jihadists for their campaign. And we saw that in London today, or we think we did. I wonder whether you have a message that helps us in the response to that sort of social media campaign.
I think these tools are obviously just tools, and it's something that our intelligence agencies are monitoring. The use by people who are up to no good, because in a lot of ways they're seeking to build communities too, and reach out and trying to create space for their adherents to move deeper into a very dangerous ladder of engagement and involvement in their organizations. And so, I think it's important for governments and agencies that are in this business to be mindful of the new ways and the sort of improvised ways that these networks can come together. At least in our case, I know it's something that our administration takes very, very seriously and have put good people on. But judging by how other big institutions adapt to the positive uses of this, it's a worry that the folks in charge of making sure it's not dangerous are staying sort of on top of it.
At the top there, number 3.
Thanks. Wow. It's a question about corporate influence in our political process, both in America and here. And whether you've done much work that's emotive and very clearly communicative, like the great work that you did for Barack, around overturning Citizens United in America, or suggestions for how we can combat big gas and coal having an undue influence in our media and in our political process here.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, the president's got good policy on, and he's for the right kind of changes to our political process and our campaign finance system. For me personally, this is an important issue, and in the absence of a vote in the Senate for myself, as a practitioner, we tried to be the change that we were trying to see in campaigns, and so we matched Mitt Romney dollar for dollar in contributions that came in, between $1,000 and $5,000, which is the limit in the U.S. It's just that the difference was for him, that was 2/3 of all his money, and then plus all the super PAC stuff, and that was sort of what he was influenced by. For us, that same amount of money was just 1/3 of our total, and our big margin was the grassroots donations of $5 and $10 at a time. And so I feel like whatever happens legislatively in the president's second term on this issue, a lasting legacy of his will be to prove that the model of doing it $5 and $10 at a time is plausible and sustainable and can bring victory even in a post-Citizens United world where the super PACs and the sort of dark money organizations are playing.
They'll perhaps have more influence in congressional elections, won't they, the whole Citizens United decision?
Perhaps. I mean, but again, it's sort of how campaigns are going to decide to conduct themselves and make an issue of it or not. We talked about where the other side was getting their money a lot in our content that Stephen Steen created.
We'll go to number 1 here again, and then up to 4.
Are you available between now and September? And if so... And if so, would you consider applying for a 457 visa?
You're the first one to ask.
I'm not sure that Julia Gillard has the same story to sell somehow. A bit more complicated in her case, perhaps. Let's have number 4.
Yeah. How did you guys encourage participation when it came to crowdsourcing personal stories? Because there can often be hesitancy in giving those forward.
Yeah, I mean, you should talk about this one.
Yeah, I think, in a lot of these, well, one, in the sort of initial barrier, a lot of them were anonymous to begin with. Or what I mean by that is first names only is what we would put out for folks. But I think an important piece is that people actually found a lot of value in seeing their own stories told, whether that was on the blog or through video. And, I would call dozens of people, and I know my team call hundreds of people, and most people were, astonished and felt honored at the idea that their stories would be used to illustrate where the country was at this point, and to show and demonstrate the impact the president has had. And so, I would say more often than not, people were excited to have us come and visit them and to tell their story.
Down here, number 2.
In the clip of the little boy whose dad came back from Iraq, I was just curious what was behind the decision not to show the father at all.
He was active service at the time. And so there are rules about how active military people can participate in political commercials, basically.
Much of the time when we do campaigns, digital is considered an afterthought. I just wonder, with a campaign like this, is it a separate stream, and do you guys really get to drive the campaign?
I think we were lucky in both campaigns because presidential campaigns, by their very nature in our system, are startups. And so I truly believe, had an organizational advantage over our opponents in both 2008 and 2012 because of how we set it up. And so having digital have a seat at the senior table and have a relationship with the candidate and with the campaign manager that is equal to the traditional communications and field and political and finance functions where, we were responsible. I mean, the digital folks, I think, are going to make, in the 10 and 20 years' time, the kids on our campaign are going to make the best campaign managers because we're the only ones in the building who had to think as smart about what all the other aspects of the campaign were doing, all at the same time. And so we had to be on top of the rapid response, and Stephen's team was in the mix with guiding our rapid response strategy. But then we had to go to a meeting about our voter registration strategies in Florida and how we were going to build tools to make that process easier and how we were going to target advertising to get people who aren't registered to get registered. And then we would have a meeting in the evening about how we were going to have to raise $120 million this month. And so our team got to be exposed to all the different aspects of the campaign and try to build something that was greater than the sum of those parts. And so I think that that was something that our organization was able to use to great effect, and it's something that I hope provides a model for NGOs and cultural institutions and brands that are grappling with how to adapt to the new era.
Right up the top here, number 6.
Were you influenced at all by Saul Alinsky, who's considered to be the founder of modern community organizing?
It's a loaded question. We come in for lots of attacks from the paranoid right on this, but the president had real concrete experience organizing and all the different both theoretical and practical aspects of that when he was a young man. And we had folks like Marshall Gans, who's based at Harvard, come out and help train our organizers and help build our system. And so the House meetings and these things were very, it was taken with a level of seriousness that, that made a difference.
Number 2.
All right, thanks, Joe and Stephen, particularly for taking the legacy of Howard Dean to such great heights. My question is about Organising for America, and specifically that we've seen so many amazing things about your political campaigns centered on the vote tonight. But what about the nitty-gritty behind the scenes? Because on Dodd-Frank, for example, it would seem that its opponents are spending a gazillion dollars on lobbyists 24/7 in every corner of the room. Even such massive achievement as the Affordable Care Act was, it's been white-anted effectively.
So the campaign entity, as we've talked about, goes out of business after the election. And so the people have these relationships with the president, with each other in the context of the campaign, but the actual staff and the thousands of people and the technology and all this stuff sort of goes away after the election. And so the challenge right now and over the last 6 months has been to start up a new organization that's a 501c4 nonprofit to do this kind of issue advocacy and to provide a counterbalance to a lot of the special interests in DC with a lot of energy and continuity of these folks outside DC. That's something that obviously isn't at the scale of the presidential campaign and is not it's going to be a different experience and a different kind of impact, but it's something that the president takes seriously, and it's being set up basically the opposite of how we did it in 2009 and 2010. So I'm hopeful, and we're working on it.
I think we'll just take one more question from up there. Is that someone up there wants one?
I just wondered, I do a lot of work with different brands and companies that are really, really nervous when it comes to social media about taking part and all the risks that are involved. And I would just think, I guess, for an election that there'd be even more risks than, a brand might be taking. So I guess I'm just curious, what would you say, is it to people that want to take part but are scared? Did you have a real risk management strategy in place for social media?
The risk management system was me being willing to get fired. And that's true. I mean, my role at the top of the organization was to try to create a safe space for people who are creative to do what they do that I can't do, and try to provide the political boundaries and context for that. And so we had a lot of creative people who, at times had very awkward and unproductive interactions with the other very more political staff in the communications team or the research team or something like that. And so, we didn't always get it right. Sometimes we wound up with a post from our Tumblr on the top of the Drudge Report like all day, and like ruins that part of the news cycle. But the truth is that we had a lot of committed people, on our staff who wanted to get it right. And so we were able to create that safe space. And if I can, act as an enforcer of those boundaries to let those people be creative and be willing to take the heat if we do something that's a little bit further than other people want to go, then that was sort of enough to make the system work. And the truth is that there wasn't a lot of approval process for the content that we produced. There was an approval process on our team, and it went through Stephen and me and a couple of other leaders, but sort of not sending that around for comment by 30 people, and 7 of whom are lawyers, is one way to mitigate people's what in our organization are called the bedwetters.
Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Stephen, Joe, thanks very much. Terrific.